have to make the disclaimer that everything you're about to hear is just my opinion, so keep that in mind before burning me at the stake. But we need to talk about what Atari should be doing with the VCS. So first of all, grab your pitchforks, because I'm gonna say it again. The Atari VCS is a PC. It just is. But that's not a bad thing. Yes, it has its own custom operating system on their Atari World OS. We'll talk about that in a moment. But it's a PC. It even in its own marketing and branding and options list, it lets you dual boot Windows or your OS of choice. If you want Linux or whatever you want, you can literally install Windows 10 or Linux or any other operating system that will be compatible with the hardware. So it's a PC, but that's not a bad thing. It just isn't. You can put the pitchforks down. You don't need to pierce me through the heart over this. It's a PC. That's not a bad thing. Given the fact that it's a PC, essentially, the specs aren't that great. And this is for a number of reasons, a lot of production delays and all the problems that Atari notoriously had with the VCS. The specs on release, especially compared to PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, the specs inside the Atari VCS aren't that great. It has limited RAM. The maximum you can get is 8 gigabytes. And the best APU that's inside of it, the only APU that it comes with, is the AMD R1606G, which is a dual-core 4-thread processor with Vega 3 graphics. Now, it has 8 gigabytes of RAM, and this is kind of important here because 8 gigabytes of RAM with an APU really isn't that much, because remember, APUs, the graphics built into the APU, draws upon the system memory for its VRAM. So 8 gigabytes isn't enough. It isn't enough to run the entire system efficiently, especially when it's sharing memory with the video. You want more memory and you want fast memory. Now, I'm going to include a link here to 𝘀𝗵cie𝘂𝗹𝗱 video because he's one of the few YouTubers that I actually know of that has actually received an Atari VCS. And these system limitations, the 8 gigabytes, the Vega 3, all that, these system limitations rear their ugly head in a big way with the Atari VCS when you are running Windows 10, let's say, and trying to run something like, well, he's doing Cyberpunk 2077, which is already just a barrel of snakes right there. But running any game runs into issues, even running Fortnite and things like that. It's just that 2 cores and 4 threads and 8 gigabytes of RAM being shared with the Vega 3 graphics, it's not the best gaming experience if you download Windows 10 and Steam. The point is, the current hardware release, there are issues if you're trying to dual boot into Windows and have your Steam library on there. So kind of keeping these limitations in mind, here's my opinion on what I think Atari should do, what might serve them the best going forward in the future. The 3 things Atari should do with the VCS. 1, I think that there should be an option to sell the Atari VCS as a standalone, small form factor, bare bones option. Hopefully with the ability to install or choose a better APU with more cores and better graphics, because the APU that's in the RCS, that's in the VCS came out in 2019. I know that's not that long ago, but AMD has released better options since then. Also, it should have the ability to up the RAM, either order it with more RAM as a bare bones case, or the ability to install, small SODIMM DDR4 RAM yourself. Either way, 8 gigabytes isn't going to cut it. In my personal opinion, I think 16 gigabytes is going to be the minimum, especially with an APU, especially a more powerful APU. Now we'll get to those hardware options and APU options here in a minute, but I think the second thing Atari should do today, like if someone from Atari sees this video, this is something that they should put into action today, if possible. I know there's going to be red tape and there could be licensing things and whatever, but I think Atari should work on this. Selling Atari World OS separately. They could make that available today as a download that is free of all the production issues, especially in 2020 and the pandemic. They could sell the operating system today, maybe for $100 or so, that people can install in their own custom HTPC builds or just custom PC builds in general. Dual booting to Atari OS, alongside of Linux or Windows 10 on your own custom build, that would be amazing. And Atari would make money, and they could start doing it today, theoretically. But yeah, anyways, make Atari World OS available for purchase as a separate download for users to install in their own custom builds. I think that would be a good idea if possible. Now, the third thing I think Atari should do with the VCS is continue what they are doing. Sell the VCS complete as is at whatever price point makes the most sense for them. I think right now it's between like $250 and $400 depending on how you spec it out. So yes, continue to sell the Atari VCS as its own complete system, but I think Atari should get working on hardware upgrades as soon as possible. I'm talking maybe by mid-2021, they should hopefully be rolling out these upgrades. And those upgrades pertain to the APU and the RAM, as we discussed earlier. So let's go over those. First, we need to talk about the TDP of the Atari VCS and the R1606G. It's 15 watts, so that's pretty much the envelope as of now we have to work with unless they upgrade the cooling somehow within the Atari VCS. But that 15 watt TDP is actually open to a lot of, well, it's open to some more powerful options. For instance, AMD's V1605B system on a chip. It's got a 12 to 25 watt TDP, so you can use 15 watts TDP perfectly with that chip. And the V1605B is 4 cores, 8 threads, and has Vega 8 graphics. A considerable improvement even at 15 watts TDP. But there's an even better option, AMD's V2718 SoC. That can be used in a 10 to 25 watt TDP, again perfect for the 15 watt TDP of the Atari VCS. And the V2718 is 8 cores and 16 threads. And effectively it has Radeon Vega 7 graphics. So 8 cores, 16 threads, it boosts to over 4 gigahertz, and you'd step up to Vega 7 graphics from Vega 3. That would be a baller little chip in the Atari VCS whenever they do decide to upgrade the internals or make a second revision of the VCS to offer hopefully later this year. But you know the deal with the Atari VCS on that release front. So I can't mention those upgrades in processors with the complete Atari VCS without talking about price. I'm not here to speculate what price that would be, but I think if you could price it competitively with, if you could keep, let's use the V2718 SoC, 15 watt TDP, 8 cores, 16 threads, Vega 7 graphics, and you could keep the Atari VCS in that ultra spec under about $500. I think that would be compelling to some buyers. That chip paired with at least 16 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM at 3200 megahertz or so, that would be a great little system. I, for one, would be way more excited about it. I mean, I think the Atari VCS as is neat, but that's a very divisive, the VCS right now is a very divisive subject, to say the least. Well, let's talk about the small form factor bare bones idea again for a second. Since the VCS relies on a custom SoC from AMD, that means that the APU is embedded into the motherboard itself. So if the bare bones kit could possibly be some sort of custom mini ITX board where you could install your own AM4 socket CPU, it would have to be a low TDP. If that could be possible, this video is all about just speculation and wishing. So if that could be possible, that would be great. Now, what kind of price point would that small form factor bare bones case be? At least close to $100 as possible. I don't think that's really feasible, but kind of around $200 might be the sweet spot. I think around $200 for an Atari VCS bare bones small form factor case that allows you hopefully the option to put in your own APU, or comes optioned with those that V2718 or maybe the V1605B options, but you keep it around $200. I think that would be great. Now, the whole point of this, and I'll wrap it up by saying this, the whole point of this video was just to list some options that I think Atari should give to the consumer. I think the most important thing right now was idea number 2, where they should start selling Atari World OS separately. They can start generating revenue right now by making that operating system downloadable today for people to use in their custom builds. But out of everything I said, I want to know what you think. Let me know in the comments below. There are no right or wrong answers here. This is completely just speculation. You know, we're all geeks about something. This is a really fun subject to talk to, and we all know that the Atari VCS is more than open to such speculation and such discussion. So let me know what you think. Do you think it's a good idea that the Atari VCS should keep selling the Atari VCS as we know it, with possibly upgraded hardware here in the next year? Do you think it's a good idea for Atari to sell a standalone bare-bones small form factor VCS case, as I mentioned? And also, what do you think about selling Atari World OS as a standalone download to use in custom builds, no matter what PC case you use? Let me know in the comments below. It'll be fun to talk about it. But most importantly, what I want you to take away from my videos is this. If you don't remember anything else, remember that you are loved. No matter what your geek thing is, you are loved and you are worthy of your own self-respect. Please remember that. And with that, let's have fun talking in the comments below. Take care.